Hi, I'm Cassandra from Propercorn, the popcorn company. For as long as I can possibly remember, I've always wanted to start my own business. I think it was just a case of what rather than when. And about 5 years ago, felt there was an opportunity in the snack market to create something that didn't compromise between taste and health. Typically, you know, if you get that sort of 3 o'clock afternoon slump and the things that kind of leave you feeling satisfied also make you feel a bit guilty, and then the healthy stuff is quite sort of bland and not necessarily that fulfilling. So anyway, you know, have always had sort of a fond memory of making popcorn from a child, and went home and spoke to my mum about the idea, and she reminded me that the last present that my dad bought me, he died when I was 16, was a popcorn machine. So I guess that was the extra bit of conviction that I needed to quit my job and give it a go. So once I had sort of decided, right, I want to start a popcorn business, I then had absolutely no idea what I was doing. The world of food manufacturing is quite dominated by sort of, you know, these big industrial estates all over the UK with kind of big burly men who initially didn't really want to take me seriously. So I was kind of going up and down the country meeting with manufacturers and got quite a few doors shut in my face. And I think probably understandably so, you know, young girl, no proven track record, for them to stop their production line for an unproven idea is a bit of a gamble. And I think that often that's the way that you need someone to kind of, I guess, take a punt, take a little bit of a leap of faith, and it's your job as the entrepreneur to convince them and come across credible. So eventually met someone who was willing to kind of give us a go, and we started off. This was right back when, you know, the popcorn market hadn't really taken off, and we started, you know, no one could season popcorn in the way that I wanted it to be seasoned at the time, and so we started off basically fashioning a cement mixer. I'd stand there with a handheld spray gun, misting on oil, pouring in seasoning, and, you know, it was a very kind of crude operation. And, you know, fast forward to kind of 3.5 years later, we've got 10 lines going now, producing best part of 3 million packs a month, selling 3 million packs a month. So yeah, I think getting the production side set up was a big challenge. Also, just, you know, there is amazing support out there. So I enrolled with the East London Small Business Centre and did a 2-week course just to learn the kind of rudimentary nuts and bolts of cash flow and VAT and just things that I just didn't really have, I wasn't that well versed in. I think, you know, I'd spent a good couple of years, you know, trying to get things off the ground, and what I thought I could achieve in a short period of time just inevitably took so much longer. And I think part of the obstacle was obviously funding. So I moved back home, you know, really lucky that I was able to move back home, and was doing sort of odd jobs, you know, saving up a bit of cash, and managed to save up about 10k, which I used to put in place the kind of foundations of the business. So be it the, you know, registering the IP and the trademark, getting the initial designs done, and then got to a point where I wanted to feel accountable to someone and be able to, you know, I found it quite lonely doing it on my own. And a very good friend of mine, Ryan, had always expressed a real keen interest in the idea, and was working on his own businesses at the time. And we very informally came together just to sort of, you know, see how the relationship would work. And it was brilliant from the word go, and we launched the business together 3.5 years ago. You know, it's inevitable that you're going to have to make sacrifices. They don't feel like huge sacrifices to me, because ultimately I'm following what I love and what I care about. You know, right at the beginning, having to sort of move back home and, you know, working in a pub evenings and weekends, and you know, doing sort of odd jobs that weren't particularly fulfilling in order to, you know, save some money was hard. But I was motivated by, you know, where I was trying to get to, and you know, on a day-to-day level, nothing feels like a sacrifice, because I feel so fortunate and lucky to, you know, see my idea get to where it is to today, and I feel really excited by that. As our name suggests, Propercorn, our tagline is done properly, and it's something that it's an approach that runs right through the heart of business. So from a product perspective, done properly is all about quality. Every element of the product, from the corn being GM-free, gluten-free, every aspect is incredibly well considered. All the recipes we make from scratch. We are really diligent in sourcing all the different kind of aspects of the product and taking real care. So done properly is a product truth, but it actually extends beyond that to our approaches as a business. And in its simplest form, it really means everything as good as it can possibly be. So from our cardboard boxes, which are illustrated cases, to the way that we approach meetings with positivity and energy, it's an approach that every single member of the team and everything that we produce, every bit of output of the business stands for. In terms of trying to find our first customers, I don't think there is any kind of magic recipe. It really is a case of following every lead, cold calling, meeting up with anyone who's, you know, willing to give you their time and being grateful for their time, and turning up prepared. I mean, it's all well and good having, you know, a great product. You know, we'd spent a huge amount of time perfecting the packaging and all the rest of it, but you have to have the back end sorted as well. So we didn't just turn up with, you know, try our product, doesn't it taste great? We'd love you to sell it. There was, you know, a robust business plan behind it. We were able to operationally meet all their requirements. The back end had to meet the front end as well. And I think, you know, our first customer was Google HQ. So I had a friend who worked at Google at the time, and their offices are amazing. They kind of basically give you every type of food you could possibly want, and have a sushi bar and a rotisserie and God knows what else. And they free issue all their snacks. And we just, you know, it's invariably the kind of the vicious circle that most people face when launching a product, in that you need a big order to satisfy your minimum order quantities from a manufacturing point of view, but you also need to be able to demonstrate some sales data for people to want to give you that big order. And we met with the head chef at Google HQ, and he absolutely loved the idea, and was just willing to kind of take a bit of a punt and place like a really healthy first order. And out of 48 snacks that they were free issuing at the time, Propercorn very quickly was the fastest moving, which was an amazing stat to then be able to kind of tout around to the rest of the industry. And off the back of that, we got some really keen interest. And within our first 3 months, we got Waitrose. Within our first year, we got Tesco's. And I think one of the things that we're really proud of and can still sort of demonstrate today is that you can see us in the major multiples, in the meal deals, but you can also find us in, you know, Harvey Nichols or Selfridges, members clubs, whatever it may be. And I think it's really important that we can demonstrate both as a brand. So when I first had the idea, I needed to, you know, save some money. So I moved back home and managed to save about 10k. And then in order to satisfy minimum order quantities, we needed a bit of seed capital. So we got some private funding of about 30k. And then within our first year, went through a kind of slightly more formal round of investment for a little bit more. Since then, we haven't raised any further funds. Our cash flow is sustainable, and I think from an investment point of view, it's really important that for us to take on investment, it's not just about funding, it's also about smart money. So it's the added value. What can the investors bring to the table above and beyond the cash injection? Are there contacts? Is there sort of expertise, experience? Can we go to them for kind of sanity check on big key decisions? It's that kind of added value that's really important to us beyond just the kind of the check. So working with your best friend, I think, you know, you're always advised against, you know, working with friends or family, and it was something that actually both myself and Ryan were wary of, because we have such a great friendship and we didn't want to kind of compromise that in any way. So very upfront, we've sort of, I guess, had an agreement that we would always kind of be very open and honest and communicate as much as possible. And, you know, invariably, of course, it has its challenges, but it's a great relationship, and we really kind of bounce ideas off each other, and it's just great to be accountable to someone. I have so much respect for people that are able to do it completely on their own, because for both of us, it's wonderful, kind of, I guess, especially in the business, in the infancy of the business, already having that sense of team. It just injected for us much more momentum and pace into the business growth. And I think, you know, at a strategic level, we're involved across all areas of the business pretty much together. And then we sort of, I guess, try and take ownership of various departments between us. And I think that as we grow, the challenge is to ensure that myself and Ryan's time is really kind of future focused, that we're constantly focused on growing the business rather than sort of doing day-to-day management. I think that we need to shape the business in a way that allows the business to function and allows us to kind of push it on. And that's something that, you know, at this kind of 3.5 year timing, that we're consciously trying to put in place. Something we place a huge amount of emphasis on as a business is the relationships that we hold. Business, it sounds cheesy, but essentially is just people, and it's so important to not kind of depart from that. We want to work with people that we like working with, and we hope that they enjoy working with us as well, otherwise it's no fun for anyone. So, you know, it's right through the kind of the team in its entirety. Everyone is empowered to you know, really invest in those relationships, whether it be with buyers, with suppliers, with people that we collaborate with from a marketing perspective. What we are reluctant to do as a business is just kind of, I guess, sponsor things or have kind of empty relationships. If we're going to be involved in something or build a relationship, it needs to be wholeheartedly. So, for example, our relationship with the British Fashion Council, we're the official snack of London Fashion Week, something we're really proud of and excited by. But it's not just a case of sticking a logo on an event? Can we collaborate with the young designers? Personally, I've done some mentorship and judging for the BFC. What ways can we get involved and support and develop the relationship in a richer way? And I think that's to everyone's benefit. You get so much more out of the relationship with our buyers, and we don't just we treat every buyer, regardless of size, with the same level of interest and attention, and it's all important. So if we're making internal decisions, it's great to hear from a buyer perspective how they're seeing the category, what they're seeing in the market, and not just blindly following sort of what's going on between these four walls, but actually really collaborating, including everyone in on the process and on the key decisions. Inevitably, there's always going to be obstacles and mistakes, and things don't go according to plan. I remember right at the beginning, we really naively didn't quite grasp the idea of shelf life. So obviously we knew about shelf life, but we didn't realise that shops require a minimum level of shelf life when they receive the product into their depots, essentially. And so we had this big production order of popcorn, and we're getting close to where that limit was, and had to shift, I think it was about 30 to 50 Ks worth of popcorn. This was, when we were really small and we didn't have that fluidity in the business. And, essentially it was myself and Ryan and Alex on the phone, just cold calling, trying to shift as much as we can. And it was a great lesson, and, it was all hands on deck, and we managed to get rid of it, but we never made that mistake again. Our naivety has often been our biggest weapon, because it's maybe allowed us to approach things in a slightly different way to the way that other brands have, and that's probably given us a bit of cut through and differentiated us in the category a bit. A good example of that is everything we do, we place a huge amount of emphasis on the aesthetics of the brand. So instead of just doing brown cardboard boxes, we're like, why don't we illustrate them, make them really colourful? And it wasn't just for creative sake, or it wasn't just for the sake of creativity. Actually, our creativity sits right at the heart of our business strategy. So our compliancy in store shot up overnight as a result of the bright coloured boxes, because the guy who is in the stock room loading the shelves is far less likely to forget about our boxes when surrounded by brown cardboard boxes. So I think that was a really great example of where maybe our lack of experience and wanting to just make everything as good as it could possibly be actually had a real commercial impact to our business. The aesthetics of the brand is something that, on a personal level, I'm incredibly passionate about. And when I was saving money to set up the business, I spent about £6,000 with a packaging designer who had been recommended, who was hugely talented. And I think I just wanted to feel comfort from using an expert. And the designs came and they looked great, but they just didn't feel authentic. It didn't feel like me. And so as we were getting closer to launch, I basically decided to put them to one side and completely start from scratch, and really crudely designed the packaging on PowerPoint. And a friend of mine who's an illustrator said, can you illustrate the seasoning at the bottom of the pack? And we cobbled it together. And I think it was a really important lesson in, actually, you don't always have to use the experts, and actually if you back yourself and place emphasis on your own intuition and gut feel, that authenticity does come through. And every creative output from Propercorn comes from the team. It's something that really, I believe, sets us apart from a lot of businesses. So we very, very rarely outsource anything, especially creatively. Every time we do, it does feel slightly detached, and we've got, for want of a better word, quite an inexperienced team, but they more than make up for that with attitude and talent and passion. And I don't know, I think it's given us an aesthetic that is a little bit different, and I think it's because it hasn't just been designed from someone outside of the business. It comes from us. All the ideas, all the brainstorming, it's all done collaboratively as a team. It's really important to be able to kind of very clearly visualize your goal and have real kind of clarity and understanding on what that looks like. I think if you don't have a very kind of clear vision in what you're going after, there are so many things that come sideways and can try and knock you off course, that you really need that sort of resilience and that determination, that very kind of clear, single-minded focus on where you're heading. And I think just energy, it sounds silly, but you need to be able to motivate people, you need to be able to get buy-in. Something that I always think about is execution over idea. I think there's so many amazing ideas out there, and even on a personal level, I have new ideas every day. I wish I had time to kind of pursue more of them, but it's all about the execution. I think there are so many ideas that would work, but just don't, because people don't execute them in the right way. And I would even go as far as to say success is 90% execution. And 10% idea. It's all about being able to actually realise the goals. We've experienced some amazing growth over the past kind of 3 to 4 years, and it's difficult to kind of pinpoint exactly what that you can attribute that to. I think the timing was spot on in terms of what was happening in the category. Health, premiumization, impulse, all kind of key trends that Propercorn very perfectly plugs into. I think also there's an authenticity to the brand and the business that has kind of afforded us some cut through, that I guess from the beginnings, the story, right through to the kind of passion and dynamism that the team demonstrates. I think that's given us a lot of momentum and cut through. And I think we're not showing any signs of slowing down. I think I'll right from the word go, the goal has always been sort of so far in the distance. We're not even close to achieving our ambitions and our goals yet. And I think probably one thing we could probably do a bit better is pause sometimes and celebrate some of the growth. But we're just so driven and motivated by the bigger picture that we just keep going, which is really exciting and incredibly rewarding. From a UK perspective, there is a huge amount of growth still to be had, in terms of distribution, in terms of format and packaging. So we've developed sharing bags, multi-packs, but we're also looking at other formats. I think if we are going to confidently be, the ultimate lifestyle snack, we need to perfectly play into people's lifestyles in all that kind of different permeations. And then beyond the UK, we have started exporting in the past year. So we are in Belgium, Netherlands, Ireland, Switzerland and France. And I think it's been a huge learning curve for us. You have to have a really bespoke approach to each territory and each new market. Consumer behaviour is different. The trends will be slightly different as well. And I think that's something that we are kind of learning from, is that you can't just sort of go in and try and replicate the exact model that was successful in the UK. You have to have that kind of bespoke approach and really understand the consumer behaviour. You know, what might be a best-selling flavour in the UK just might not work in another country, and so it's about looking at their, you know, top sellers and maybe even developing flavours specifically for a country. Also, you know, from a marketing perspective, the way that we're received in the UK in terms of, you know, the creativity, the colour, maybe in another country they want much more focus on health and that kind of messaging. So it really has to be tailored for each territory. Something else that's really important to us as we export is that we don't just have a scattergun approach and just start sort of planting flags, you know, all over Europe. What we want to do is really develop the relationship with the countries that we are starting with, and make sure that we really grow in a kind of much deeper, consistent way like we did in the UK. So we are a team of about 30 now, and I think by the end of the year we'll be up at about 50, which comes with, you know, lots of challenges. You know, one of the things we're most proud of is the culture that we, you know, have as a business. I think there's something very rare and unique about it. There's a level of dedication and care that I haven't come across in many other businesses. And the challenge for myself and Ryan, and in fact the whole business, is to maintain that as we grow. I don't know what the kind of recipe is for that, but it's something that as a business priority is right up there with growth, and all the rest of it is maintaining our culture, because it's the team that make the business. Our recruitment policy is to place more emphasis on attitude over experience. So if you don't demonstrate positivity, passion, you know, a sense of entrepreneurialism, you won't get the job. We've had people apply for roles who have been incredibly, in terms of experience, suitable, but just wouldn't be the right culture fit, and they have to demonstrate both. We're pretty unwavering in that, so we take a huge amount of time trying to find the right people. And, you know, the final kind of thought in my head is always, could I go for a drink with this person? Would I want to actually spend time with this person? Because at the end of the day, you know, you spend so much time together, it's important that the team gels and there's a synergy there. I think when you first start a business, there's this, you know, a lot of decisions are very intuitive. You are, I guess, just having to think on your feet and just move very quickly. Then you get to sort of adolescent size, and it's all about trying to also set up the foundations of the business that can allow us to grow on to kind of that next stage, which is about processes, systems, operationally being very sound and robust. So it presents completely different challenges, which I'm not necessarily always the best person to put those in place. And Ryan too. I think, you know, we're great at injecting pace and making quick decisions, and I think motivating the team, but it's also about recognizing your limitations and allowing people who are better at some of the other aspects to kind of, you know, have their input and put their value into the business. And I think it's been really interesting kind of seeing that shift, and also learning to release control. That's something that, you know, I've had to get comfortable with. You know, it's your baby and something that's so precious to you, and being able to kind of step back and let people also have their say and put their mark and stamp on the business is so important and necessary. We try and ensure that there's innovation in every part of the business, not just in kind of product and the obvious departments and marketing. Operationally, is there a better way to do our boxes so that we can get more on a pallet, and can we revisit the way that we do in-store display so that there's more standout? And I think the way to remain fresh as a brand is not to look within your category, but to look outside it. So we look at the way Apple, every touch point of their brand, every touch point of the consumer experience is so well considered. So the way you open the box, the thought there in the packaging is something that we will we'll always look to other brands outside of our category for inspiration, and then also just making sure that the team are feeling motivated and inspired, so placing a lot of emphasis on learning. We have a book club. We have put things in place to encourage cross-departmental involvement, so that there's real empathy from department to department, so that you can learn and grow, making sure that everyone commercially has some kind of savviness, that you're not just sitting in your department without a broader understanding of the commercial goals of the business. I think that's so important. I think part of the reason why a small part of the reason why you want to start your own business is to, do things your way and maybe not be so accountable. I didn't particularly love the kind of institutional nature of university and school and being part of a big organisation, and so I wanted to start my own thing. What's interesting as you grow and the business becomes more successful is that you actually probably become more accountable than you ever have been, and more responsible to other people than you ever have been, which has kind of taken me by surprise. But I love what we're trying to achieve so much that it's great. I would say I'm not very risk averse, so I tend to not overthink things too much, which probably isn't always the best approach, but I place quite a lot of emphasis on just gut feel and going for something. And if it doesn't kind of pan out maybe exactly how you intended, which is often the case, you just have to be flexible and just respond really quickly. And I think it's important to make quick decisions. I think often, pace, momentum is so important in business growth, that you ponder too much and you get too caught up in the rhetoric and the data and all the rest of it. You might miss that window. I know that there are people who might disagree with that, but that's definitely my approach.